To the question of invasion, I would observe that there has never been a period in all these long centuries of which we boast when an absolute guarantee against invasion could have been given to our people. I have myself full confidence that if all do their duty, if nothing is neglected, and the best arrangements are made as they are being made, we shall prove ourselves once more able to defend our island home, to ride out the storm of war, and to outlive the menace of tyranny, if necessary, for years, if necessary, alone. That is what we are about to try to do. That is the result of His Majesty's government in America. That is the will of Parliament and the nation. The British Empire and the French Republic, linked together in their cause and in their need, defend to the death their native soil, aiding each other like good comrades to the utmost of their strength. Even though large tracts of Europe and many old and famous states have fallen or may fall into the grip of the Gestapo and all the odious apparatus of the Nazi rule, we shall not flag or fail. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender! And if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island or large part of it were subjugated and starving, then our empire, beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, would carry on the struggle until in God's good time, the new world, with all its power and might, steps forth to the rescue and the liberation of the old.
Later, no more planes, and nature was taking its toll.
The sun is your friend early in the morning when you're cold, and then it's brutal the rest of the day. And then at night you're cold. When you're on a life raft at sea, it's much worse than being in a foxhole. And they say there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole, or you can multiply it a few times on a raft. That's all you do on a raft. Now, I don't care if you're an atheist or what you are. When you reach the end of your rope and you got nowhere else to turn, your atheism isn't going to help you. You're going to turn and look up. And so that's all we did on the raft was pray morning, noon, and night. And then we had to start, learning how to survive off of the ocean. There's some things that are not part of our food chain, but when you're starving, you eat it.
Over the next 3 weeks, the men survived by killing albatross that landed on the raft and using it as bait to catch small fish. But soon that bait looked too good to waste.
Eventually another albatross landed, and I told the guys, we got to try to eat it. So this one we devoured it like a hot fudge sundae, just delicious.
They also survived on liver from small sharks they caught with their bare hands. While Louis drifted across the Pacific,
In the U.S., President Roosevelt signed a death certificate for First Lieutenant Louis Zamperini. According to the file, Louis was dead. After 27 days at sea, hope came alive. The men spotted an aircraft.
They came down real low, far away, and they came in low right by us. And all of a sudden, machine gun firing. My first thought, well, those are B-25, those are idiots.
But those were not U.S. planes. It was the Japanese.
You got the bullets coming out from above, and you got the sharks hungry below. It was a bad situation.
After a 30-minute assault, thinking Louis and his crew were dead, the Japanese left. Miraculously, none of the men were hit with a single bullet. But 6 days later, their 33rd day at sea, tail gunner McNamara died. Louis said a brief eulogy and slipped him into the sea. For 2 more weeks, Louis and pilot Russell Phillips drifted. Suddenly, they saw land, but their raft was spotted by the Japanese.
They had spent 47 days in the South Pacific, drifting nearly 2,000 miles to the Marshall Islands before being rescued by the enemy.
We were taken to the island of Josie and weighed in at 30 kilo, which is about 65 pounds. We still couldn't walk. We had to crawl.
Within 48 hours, they were transferred to Kwajalein, Execution Island.
I come from the vast Pacific, wide open, the sky wide open. Now I open up my eyes, I'm in a little cell.
Guards delighted in telling Louis about the previous U.S. Marines who visited the island.
On Christmas Day, the movie Unbroken opens. It focuses on the life of Louis Zamperini, an Olympic athlete who fought in World War II, survived years as a prisoner of war, and then accepted Christ at a Billy Graham crusade after struggling with alcoholism after the war. And Zamperini's son, Luke, joins us now with more on what we can learn from your dad's life. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
This has been an incredible year. Your father finished his second book. He passed away, went to be with the Lord shortly thereafter, and now this movie about his life is opening on Christmas Day. How do you make sense of this year and the timing of this all?
Well, first of all, God's timing is perfect. And although we thought my father should live to the end of the year to see his film come out and to be the Grand Marshal of the Tournament of Roses parade and go to the Oscars, the Lord took him home on July 2nd of this year. And of course, the timing is perfect because had he been around right now, he might be pretty cranky at all the attention.
All right. I was really struck when I read the book of your father's whole story of surviving World War II and then struggling afterwards and accepting Christ at a Billy Graham crusade. The movie doesn't include that. What is your take on that omission in the movie?
Well, it would take about 9 hours to tell the entire story of Louis Zamperini. And the movie has to be, the story has to be told in less than 2.5 hours in the film. So although they didn't have the Billy Graham crusade tent scene, it didn't cast Reverend Graham, the message is still there in the film. It's not missing.
And when you say the message, what is the message that you're hoping will go out?
That the power of forgiveness. You know, the movie, is about the endurance of the human spirit, and it's also about the spirit of forgiveness.
Talk a little bit, too, about this book. I know your dad just finished writing this summer. This is a book of his life lessons. What was he hoping to really communicate with this book?
Well, what he was hoping to communicate was, of course, that the lessons he learned from all of his experiences. You know, the previous books, Devil at My Heels and Unbroken, they chronicled his story, but this is what he drew from his story. These are the lessons that he learned. And it also includes a few adventures after the war that aren't in the other books.
Mm-hmm. He talks in this book about sharing Christ with a variety of people, too. Was that part of a way of his life after he accepted Christ? After
he accepted the Lord, this was his life. He dedicated his life to reaching out to others, particularly to the troubled youth of America. And he believed that by just telling his story, being a testimony of what God did in his life, would be a good message to bring people to the Lord.
And I just want to come back to this theme of forgiveness because it really is so powerful in his life. And he says here, of all the wonderful results of changing my life, perhaps the best is my ability to forgive. As his son, as you think about his life, how did forgiveness and that ability really change his life?
Well, if you harbor hatred for somebody, you're not really hurting them. You're actually hurting yourself, because the hatred within you basically it's like taking poison, and it destroys people. So being able to forgive was actually a tonic for him, and it changed his life. He was able to no longer harbor any hard feelings for his tormentors and captors, and he subsequently had a life of joy, the joy of telling his story. Let's face it, Louis Zamperini was a miraculous person, and these miracles happened in his life to demonstrate the power of God in his life.
That's great. Well, we'll pray that this all comes out in the movie and the book. Luke Zamperini, thanks for your time.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.